Aria Winters was the star everyone followed, while Luna Vega was the rising name no one could ignore. What began as a rivalry on the convention floor spiraled into a shocking crime that left the cosplay world stunned and divided. Anime conventions were always a spectacle, a place where imagination came to life and fans could escape into worlds they had admired for years. The convention halls were alive with bright lights, colorful banners, and the constant hum of excitement. Costumes ranged from meticulously crafted armor to whimsical, hand-sewn outfits that showcased hours of dedication. Attendees wandered the aisles, cameras in hand, stopping to take photos with cosplayers who had transformed themselves into beloved characters. The energy was infectious, and for many, it was the highlight of the year. Among the thousands of attendees was a rising cosplay influencer, someone who had built a name for herself online through her elaborate costumes, engaging videos, and magnetic personality. Her social media profiles were filled with thousands of likes, shares, and comments from devoted fans who eagerly awaited each new post. Her influence extended beyond the convention floors, shaping trends and inspiring countless others to pick up sewing needles, foam, and paint. With every appearance, she brought a certain glamour and star power that drew attention wherever she went. But underneath the surface of public admiration, tension simmered. Rivalry is not uncommon in the cosplay world, especially among those chasing online fame. The influencer had been keeping an eye on a newer cosplayer whose popularity had been rising rapidly. Unlike her, the newcomer's appeal seemed effortless, and her videos began to attract attention from some of the influencer's longtime followers. While it started as friendly competition, subtle hints of jealousy began to emerge online. Followers noticed cryptic posts and slightly pointed comments, but most brushed them off as the usual banter that comes with fandom culture. Behind the scenes, however, things were more complicated. The influencer had grown protective of her status and the recognition she had worked so hard to earn. She had invested years in crafting her image and building a loyal fan base, and the idea of someone else threatening that position stirred emotions she hadn't fully confronted. Each like, comment, or share that her rival received felt like a challenge, a reminder that admiration was not something she could control. The tension remained largely invisible to the public eye, masked by the smiles, carefully posed photos, and professional content she shared online. As the day of the convention approached, the stakes felt higher than ever. Fans were eager to see her new costume, rumored to be her most intricate and impressive work yet. Behind the scenes, there was a quiet anxiety mixed with anticipation. The rivalry, though unspoken, hung in the air like a shadow. Cosplay, usually a joyful and collaborative world, was starting to feel like a battlefield with unspoken rules and invisible lines that were on the verge of being crossed. In a world where online recognition and real-life presence intersected, the influencer's carefully constructed persona was about to face a test she could not ignore. The glitter and glamour of the convention masked a growing tension, one that threatened to turn admiration into obsession and competition into something far darker. The stage was set, and neither the fans nor the influencers themselves could predict how events would unfold in the days to come. The convention day arrived with an energy that seemed almost electric. From the moment the doors opened, fans flooded the halls, their excitement palpable in the air. Cameras clicked constantly, capturing cosplayers posing with meticulous precision, each costume a work of art. Vendors shouted over the hum of the crowd, offering exclusive merchandise and rare collectibles. Panels were filled to capacity as fans lined up for hours just to catch a glimpse of their favorite creators. The halls were a kaleidoscope of color, sound, and movement. And in the middle of it all, the influencer prepared for her most anticipated moment, the debut of her newest costume. This outfit was unlike anything she had ever worn before. Hours of planning, sewing, and painting had gone into every detail, from the intricate embroidery to the perfectly molded armor pieces. It was designed not just to impress, but to dominate the stage and captivate her audience. She moved with a careful precision, checking every detail in the mirror, adjusting a strap here, smoothing a crease there. Her social media followers had been anticipating this reveal for weeks, and she knew the expectations were high. Yet, even as she focused on her presentation, her attention kept drifting to her rival. The newcomer had managed to secure a spot near the main panel area, surrounded by fans who had begun taking pictures and recording videos. The influencer felt a knot tighten in her stomach, an unfamiliar mix of anxiety and irritation. She watched as her rival smiled for the cameras, drawing attention effortlessly, seemingly unaware of the tension brewing nearby. The sight sparked something inside her that she couldn't ignore, a growing, almost obsessive determination to outperform and overshadow this competitor. What had started as a friendly rivalry on social media now felt like a real-life contest, with the convention floor as the arena. The influencer's usual confidence wavered as she observed the growing crowd around her rival, their admiration tangible and almost threatening. Each cheer, each click of a camera seemed to amplify the pressure. Behind the colorful facade of Cosplay, a quiet storm of jealousy was building, and her carefully curated persona began to crack under the weight of her emotions. As the day progressed, tension simmered beneath the surface. Fans remained blissfully unaware, capturing photos and enjoying panels, while the influencer's thoughts became increasingly consumed by her rival. She moved through the halls with a calculated purpose, adjusting poses, interacting with fans, and maintaining her online presence, all while her focus never strayed far from the newcomer. Security cameras later revealed moments where she veered off the main pathways, heading toward areas restricted to staff and organizers. Her movements, subtle at first, hinted at an underlying intent that would soon come to light. By the afternoon, the stage was set for a confrontation that no one could have predicted. The energy of the convention, once celebratory and light-hearted, had taken on an undercurrent of tension. What had begun as a showcase of creativity and fandom was transforming into a moment charged with anxiety, jealousy, and anticipation. The influencer's inner turmoil mirrored the chaotic atmosphere of the halls, a collision of artistry and obsession that hinted at events that would change the course of the convention forever. In the quieter corners of the convention center, far from the bustling vendor halls and photo ops, a different atmosphere settled in. The restricted hallways were meant for staff and organizers, lined with supply carts, electrical panels, and doors marked with signs warning attendees not to enter. Few fans ever wandered there, and those who did were quickly turned away by security. But it was in this hidden space, away from the cameras and cheering crowds, that the influencer's emotions began to boil over. She had slipped past a checkpoint unnoticed, her costume drawing attention on the main floor but acting as a strange disguise behind the scenes. Witnesses later described seeing her pacing in the dimly lit corridor, her elaborate outfit clashing with the stark industrial backdrop. For someone known for her glamorous public image, she looked strangely vulnerable, caught in a moment of frustration and desperation. The rival she had been watching all morning had just left a panel, escorted by a small group of fans heading toward another scheduled appearance. The influencer followed, her focus sharp and unwavering, the weight of envy pressing down on her with every step. What happened next would later be pieced together through testimonies and security footage. When the rival entered the restricted hallway, perhaps by mistake or guided by staff through a shortcut, the influencer seized the opportunity. The space was narrow and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. There, away from the bright lights and crowds, she confronted the newcomer in a way that left no room for interpretation. Her voice carried anger and intensity, filled with words that made it clear this was no longer about cosplay or performance, it was personal. She issued a threat so pointed and direct that the few staff members nearby froze in shock. The confrontation was brief, but its impact was immediate. Convention staff intervened quickly, pulling the two apart and guiding them to separate areas. Rumors began to spread within hours. whispered between attendees who caught glimpses of the scene or heard fragments from security guards. Online, vague posts started appearing, with fans speculating about drama unfolding behind the curtains of the event. What had once been seen as light-hearted rivalry was rapidly taking on a more sinister tone. The security team reported the incident to local authorities almost immediately. Protocol demanded that any threat be treated seriously, and the influencer's reputation could not shield her from the consequences. Investigators arrived at the convention center, quietly gathering statements and reviewing camera footage. Each frame of video, each message retrieved from her online activity, painted a picture of a growing obsession that had now erupted in public view. While the convention continued on the surface with panels, contests, and meet and greets proceeding as scheduled, an undercurrent of unease rippled through the community. Whispers about the confrontation grew louder, and speculation spread faster than official reports. Behind the cheerful photos and videos posted online, the reality was far darker. A line had been crossed in that hidden hallway, and what had once been a competition for admiration had now become a matter for law enforcement. The arrest did not come immediately. For several days after the convention, the influencer carried on with her usual online presence, posting photos from the event, thanking fans for their support, and maintaining the polished image that had made her so popular. To her followers, everything seemed normal, even celebratory. Behind the scenes, however, investigators were building a case. They had witnessed statements, security footage, and screenshots of troubling messages that hinted at a deeper pattern of behavior. What had seemed like a single heated moment at the convention was now being viewed as part of something larger and more concerning. When authorities arrived at her home later that week, the situation shifted from whispers and speculation to undeniable reality. Neighbors watched as police vehicles lined the street, their lights flashing quietly in the evening air. The influencer, once seen as untouchable in her glamorous world of costumes and fandom, was led out in handcuffs. Cameras captured the scene, and within hours, the footage spread online. Fans who had idolized her struggled to reconcile the person they admired with the one now facing serious allegations. Inside her home, investigators seized phones, laptops, and hard drives. Each device was combed through for evidence of threats, harassment, or communications that might explain her actions. What they found only deepened the case against her. There were posts drafted but never shared, messages written in anger, and search histories that revealed a growing fixation on her rival. To the police, this painted a troubling portrait of someone whose jealousy had spiraled beyond control. News outlets picked up the story almost instantly, turning it into a national headline. Articles detailed her rise to fame, her influence in the cosplay community, and the shocking incident that had led to her arrest. Interviews with fellow cosplayers revealed a mix of disbelief and quiet acknowledgement that tensions in the community had been rising for some time. Some spoke about the pressure of online competition, where every follower and every like could feel like a victory or a loss. Others admitted they had noticed changes in her demeanor months earlier, subtle signs of stress and obsession that now seemed impossible to ignore. For the influencer, the arrest marked the collapse of everything she had built. Sponsorships and partnerships were suspended, convention organizers cut ties, and fans who once filled her comment sections with admiration now debated her actions in real time. The very platforms that had fueled her rise were now documenting her downfall. Social media, once her stage, became a place where her reputation unraveled piece by piece. As she waited in custody, court documents revealed the seriousness of the charges. While no physical harm had occurred, the threat itself was enough to warrant legal consequences. Prosecutors emphasized the importance of addressing harassment before it escalated further, framing the case as a warning about the dangers of unchecked rivalry and obsession in digital spaces. What had begun as competition in the world of cosplay had now become a cautionary tale that blurred the line between performance and reality. The arrest was not the end of the story, but it was the moment that made it impossible to look away. The trial captured attention from the moment it was announced. Courtrooms are usually quiet, procedural places, but this case brought a wave of interest that few expected. Reporters gathered outside each day, cameras waiting to capture even a glimpse of the influencer as she arrived in plain clothes, stripped of the elaborate costumes that had once defined her public identity. The contrast was striking. Gone was the dazzling presence fans had admired. In her place stood someone who looked smaller, subdued, and overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Prosecutors laid out their evidence carefully, showing how the confrontation at the convention was not an isolated event but the culmination of months of escalating behavior. Screenshots of private messages, fragments of drafted social media posts, and recordings from the restricted hallway were all presented. Witnesses, including staff and attendees, described what they had seen and heard that day. Each piece of testimony added weight to the narrative that jealousy and pressure had pushed her past a line that could not be ignored. The defense painted a different picture. They described the influencer as someone overwhelmed by the demands of online fame, caught in a cycle of pressure, scrutiny, and competition that few outside the cosplay community could fully understand. They pointed to her spotless record prior to the incident, her years of dedication to her craft, and the emotional toll of living under constant public expectation. Mental health became a central theme, with experts testifying about how stress and anxiety can cloud judgment and drive destructive behavior. The community watched closely, divided in their opinions. Some fans felt betrayed, unable to reconcile the person they supported with the actions described in court. Others expressed sympathy, believing she was as much a victim of internet culture as she was a perpetrator of harm. The rival at the center of the story chose to remain largely silent, appearing only briefly to confirm the details of the threat before withdrawing from the public spotlight. Her career, however, surged in the aftermath, supported by waves of sympathy and solidarity from the cosplay world. When the verdict was finally delivered, it brought a sense of closure but also lingering questions. The influencer was sentenced to probation, community service, and mandatory counseling rather than jail time, a decision made in recognition of her lack of prior offenses and the clear need for rehabilitation. For some, the sentence seemed too lenient, while others saw it as a fair balance between accountability and compassion. In the months that followed, the impact of the case rippled outward. Conventions across the country introduced stricter security policies, ensuring that restricted areas were monitored more closely and conflicts among attendees were addressed before they escalated. Online communities began more open discussions about mental health, competition, and the dangers of obsession fueled by social media validation. The incident became a reminder that behind every post, every carefully curated image, and every online rivalry, real people were struggling with pressures that often went unseen. The story ended not with costumes and applause, but with reflection and caution. It revealed how admiration could quickly turn into rivalry, how rivalry could twist into obsession, and how a single moment of anger could dismantle years of success. The influencer's rise and fall became etched into the memory of the cosplay community, a story retold not for the glamour of the costumes but for the lessons it left behind.